And welcome to our lino cutting segment. I know there's a lot of variations of how people pronounce the word. Some people will say LINOCUT, some people will say LINOCUT. For the sake of Americanism, we're just going to use LINOCUT throughout this demonstration. Some of the things you're going to need are your patterns that we worked on in class, a pencil, your material you're going to be cutting into, some tape, and your two cutting tools that have handles on them. For our particular class, the ones with the red handles are going to have the larger blade, and the ones with the wooden handles are going to have our smaller blade. These are cutting blades up here on the top, so please don't touch these with your fingers. And when we're working with them, always, always, always make sure you're never holding your block like this and carving towards your other hand. We're going to talk about some safety features to prevent any issues like that in a moment. I'm going to move my tape out of the way because the first thing we want to do is we want to transfer your picture. You should have drawn this in pencil on here. I did mine in Sharpie so you could see it, and then I traced over it with pencil. You can see it's reflecting on there because when we do this with pencil, if we turn it over and we line it up with our block, and you'll want to be careful to kind of fold the edge of your paper a little bit, look for where that line is that shows through on your paper on the other side, and line it up as best you can with your block. The other thing you could do is physically cut this out and put it on top. So like this, then you're going to turn it upside down, line it up on your block, which should be about the same size. Now, you don't need any special tools for this part. You can just take your thumb and push down really hard, and you want to make sure that that white paper doesn't move though, because otherwise this doesn't work. And when I push down really hard on here, one side to another, that pencil is going to transfer. So I'm going to pick it up, and you can see the pencil just transferred right over on there. Now, before I start cutting, I kind of want to figure out the angle that's going to work best for me. It may change a few times when you're working on your table, but the best way to make sure you're not using your hand to grip this so it doesn't move is to take a pencil and two pieces of tape, and you're going to tape that pencil down to your table because this is going to help hold your block while you're carving it. Remember, these are blades. We always start with our thinnest one or smallest blade first, so that's going to be the one with the wooden handle in our class. And then when you're working on this, let me zoom in a little bit for you, you're going to start by, remember, keeping your hand always away from where you're carving with the small one, and you're going to push down and carve up just a little bit. Okay? And it's going to be hard to see at first. You can also push towards you gently. But then when you get to the end and you want to stop, you have to go the other direction to carve that little piece out, right? I'm going to move my hand because I'm carving that direction. I don't want it to head towards my hand. Carve in and pop that piece out. And you want to do this wherever you have those pencil lines showing. Essentially, you're carving out or away the pencil lines. And I'm kind of going in at a slight angle, and then I'm straightening it out so that I'm going flat to carve out those little pieces. Now, if you've never done this before, you might want to practice this on the back of your piece that you're carving just to get the hang of it, and we will do that in class. But as you can see, and I'm being careful when I'm pulling these off to not touch the blade, and I'm always keeping my hand on the same side as my carving tool because I do not want those to end up poking into each other. This takes time. You do need to be patient when you're working on this process and carefully look and see where you're working. You don't want to overwork an area or underwork an area. If it's having trouble one direction, go back the other direction to carve it out. And keep getting those little scraps off to the side and work your way through it. Alright, so you can see where when I use the larger tool, it makes a deeper groove inside those lines. And when I'm working around the other areas, some of these I had to adjust because it was more difficult to cut than I was anticipating. So some of these lines are still a little shallow. I'm going to go back in with that tool and make them just a little bit deeper for that printing process. So we're going to transfer on from this over to here, and you can see I have traced this with pencil. So all you have to do is put it down and then rub really hard. Don't let it move on that paper. So always keep a firm grip with the other hand that's not moving. And if I rub really hard, that pencil will just transfer right over. Now I'm also going to go back with a Sharpie to make those lines thicker so that I can really see them. You can see I made some changes between my original and my final one because I was remembering that KISS principle, right? Keep it simple, silly. So I want to make sure when I'm carving this out, I have simple lines that I want to go around. This one was getting a little bit more complex, so I made that change when I changed over to the Sharp. When I'm carving, I want to have my taped down pencil somewhere on my table, and you can move that around to get new pieces of tape if you need to, or you can move your block around it. This is to keep it from moving while you're carving and not put your hand on the opposite side that your blade is going towards, right? So we're going to start this off with the smaller blade, and we're going to go just around the outside of the black edges. We actually want to leave the black in there, and we're going to carve out all of the white parts that go around them. So as you do this, you can go through, and remember you want to push down into it at a bit of an angle and then flatten it out and then head off towards the edge of where you're working. And you can kind of pull out those little pieces if they get a little bit stuck. Remember, you don't want to be aiming towards your hand, so turn it as you need to, away from your hand, down at a bit of an angle, and then back up, almost like a really shallow scooping motion when you're going through it. Right? So you're going to go down straight and then back up again. Kind of like a really wide smiley face or rainbow, depending on the direction that you're pushing for this. After you go through with this small one, then we're going to change to the larger blade to scoop out the rest of this. So as I am cutting out these little sections here in the leaves, I want to leave that black behind, so I'm being careful to use that scooping motion going down in and then back up when I'm going down in and then back up to lift off all of that piece of cutting there. So any area that's left black is going to print. So if I wanted to put extra patterns in these, like with my smaller carving tool, that I would want to have non-printing areas, I could go in here and I could take off a little bit of that so that that one has like a vein down the middle. Same thing with this one, and then maybe one more over here. Now, by no means am I an expert in this field. This is actually only the second one that I have ever done. So you want to make sure you're going back in here with your thicker tool, and you'll notice this is a V-cut tool that I'm using on here. But you can also turn it on the side. You can see that blade at the tip where it's flat, and you could use it a little bit on the flat side if you need to carve out some other areas. I go one direction and then the other to really cut out some of those areas a little bit thicker. But try to make sure when you're looking at it when you're finished, when you look sideways, that your black areas are up and your white areas are down so that you can get the ink where you want it to go. We're going to try out both sides. We're going to try out where we removed the background and left the black, and we're going to try out the side where we just took out the pencil or the black lines and left all the white. There's going to be two different ways we're going to print this pattern. Now for the printing part, I have two different types of paper here. One is a linen and one is a watercolor, just because they have a little bit of texture on them. So we're going to open our ink and use our little palette knife. I do not need very much ink on my plate when I'm printing because these are small prints. So just a little swipe across. I can even scoop some back onto my palette knife and leave it on there when I'm working on it. And then I want to take this sprayer and I want to spread out my ink one direction. Now, if you watch when I'm spreading, I'm going to the end, picking it up, putting it back down on here. I'm not just rolling back and forth because that doesn't cover the entire brayer. You have to go in a circle like this to get the whole brayer covered and to spread out the ink. Also going to turn it and then go the other direction. And you can hear that noise? It means it's getting nice and spread out and even. Okay. Then I can take my plate that I'm going to be printing with, and I want to make sure it's on a flat surface, and I'm going to ink it one direction, and the other direction. So have an extra sheet of paper underneath in case something like that happens, right? Now my plate is inked. I can turn it over on my paper, put it down, use my whole palm and push down. Even dot, dot, dot like this with my fingers, and then pull it up and see what it prints. Now, when we're doing our prints, you guys will be doing this 4 times. So you'll print one, and then you'll want to line that up right next to the other one. Print a second one, same process. Colors out around the room, but keep in mind lighter colors are more difficult to see, darker colors are easier to see, and then you can see this starts to look like one whole pattern once I have the 4 on there. Make sure your name's on it and it goes over on the drying rack for that one. Now we're also going to try the flip side. Remember we did this other side? So I'm going to put, again, just a little bit more ink on there, not a whole lot. Same process. Anytime you put more ink on, you have to spread it around, turn it, spread it around the other direction. Okay, and I'm going to come over here, and you can see the difference in the plate. This time when I'm inking it, there's a lot more black on there. Tap, 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 tap. And pull it up. And you see you get a much darker color. It looks a lot more like a drawing as opposed to this one, which looks like a print. So again, you get to decide which direction you want to take your project, if you want more dark colors and more sketch-like, or if you want it to look more defined and print-like. And pull it off. Okay, so you can see these are same pattern, 2 very distinct different looks depending on how you carve them. This is carving on top of the lines, this is carving around the lines.